Acceptable forms for identification. This is what is considered acceptable identification for liquor and tobacco sales in Washington state. The ID must show date of birth, signature, except military ID, photograph of bearer, and if the ID has an expiration date. It cannot be expired. If it is expired, it is not valid. If it has been punched in one of those four things, you cannot accept it. We'll talk more on how to check ID. How are you tonight?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. Got some ID there?
Yes.
Your ID's expired, sweetie.
Oh. But I got the real ID though.
I understand that, but I got to see a valid ID. Expired ID is not valid. I can't serve you tonight until you get a valid ID.
Only this one time?
I can't, no.
No.
And I understand that. I appreciate it, but I can't. Not tonight.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank
Get
you.
your ID
Thank you.
replaced.
Good
Get back in here. Thanks, ladies. Have a good evening. You can accept number 1, a driver's license, instruction permit, or ID card issued by any U.S. state, Canadian province, or any U.S. territory or District of Columbia. Number 2, a U.S. Armed Forces ID card. Encrypted signature acceptable. Signature is not visible to the naked eye. Number 3, a Merchant Marine ID card issued by the U.S. Coast Guard. Number 4, an official passport or passport card. Number 5, Washington State Travel Card. Please go to the link on our help menu for a list of the most recent acceptable tribal IDs in Washington State. You cannot accept alien registration cards, also known as green cards. And no, the Department of Correction release card is not valid to purchase alcohol with either. How to check ID. When you ask somebody for their ID and they open up their wallet and they go like this, what do you say to them? You ask them to remove it from their wallet and hand it to you. Please don't touch their wallet or purse. They may accuse you of taking something out of there. You want to hold the ID in your hand. When you look at the photo, you look straight across. Remember, it's much easier to look at somebody straight across this way than it is up and down, because the way somebody's eyes are will never, ever, ever change. Check the quality of the ID. Give it a little bend. You'd be surprised how they're nothing more than cardboard. They'll snap in your hands. Look at the back of the ID. Sometimes they are partly photocopied. They are blank. It's not a true barcode on there. Every state has different features. I one time had a bartender share the story with me that an ID was handed to him. He looked at the back and it said, "Not valid, entertainment purposes only." He said, I looked at the guy and said, "Very clever." Does all the font type and size match up? Ask them questions on the ID. A lot of people, when they have a fake ID, they'll be using somebody else's ID and they'll have it completely memorized. What you want to do is you want to hold the ID in the hand. You want to make them feel comfortable. Because remember, they've got the information in their head from top to bottom. What you want to do is start out by asking them real questions like, so what you doing out tonight? Going to college? Where are you going to college at? When do you mean you grow up? Why do you want to do that? And then in the middle of nowhere he goes, what's your birthday? Why don't you spell a name for me? So where'd you go to high school at? Talking about it? You look in the back of it like, hey, what DMV did you get this from? You don't remember? Well, you were there for like 3 hours. I wasn't. You an organ donor? What month you born in? I'm sorry, what month is that? 3 or is that March? Oh, 3, yeah. When do you be 21? They tell you it's awesome.